The silence in the Vance mansion was a heavy, gilded thing. At 17, Lily was the perfect portrait of inherited elegance, a girl born into a world of polished marble and manicured lawns. But within her, a silent dread festered. A cold anxiety that crystallized every Monday and Wednesday at 4 p.m. That was when Mr. Elias Thorne, her private tutor, arrived. To her parents, he was a savior. To Lily, he was the shadow in the corner of every room, the smile that didn't reach his eyes, and the too long touch of his hand on her shoulder. The first time, she dismissed it as an accident. The third time, she knew with a sickening certainty that this was no accident at all. The silence in the Vance mansion was a heavy, gilded thing, broken only by the tick of an antique grandfather clock and the rustle of Lily Vance's silk blouse. At 17, Lily was the perfect portrait of inherited elegance, a cascade of brunette hair, eyes the color of a summer storm, and the effortless grace of someone born into a world of polished marble and manicured lawns. But within her, a silent dread had begun to fester, a cold anxiety that crystallized every Monday and Wednesday at 4 p.m. That was when Mr. Elias Thorne, her new private tutor, arrived. Lily's life was a meticulously crafted masterpiece, and every brushstroke was dictated by her parents. Her father, Julian Vance, was a titan of the real estate world, a man who saw properties not as homes but as assets. Her mother, Eleanor, was a socialite who viewed their home and their daughter as extensions of her own flawless public image. Lily was the shining product of their success. She attended the most exclusive private school. Her wardrobe was curated by a personal shopper, and her calendar was a rigid schedule of ballet, tennis, and charity events. The only thing that wasn't perfect was her report card. It started with a B in AP History, then a Shion in Chemistry. To most parents, this would be a minor setback. To the Vances, it was a catastrophe. It's a stain on the family name, Lily. Her father had boomed, his voice echoing in the grand foyer. We don't do mediocrity. Her mother, ever the diplomat, had taken a softer but no less pointed approach. Darling, your grades are a reflection of us. We've invested so much in your future, you can't let us down. And so, Mr. Elias Thorne entered their lives. He was the man her parents had lauded as their saving grace, a brilliant academic with a reputation for turning around struggling students. They had found him through a private, exclusive tutoring agency, and his credentials were a mile long. Ivy League graduate, published author of historical essays, and a glowing list of references. He was the perfect solution. Lily had first met him on a sunlit afternoon. He arrived with a briefcase and a gentle smile, looking more like a young professor than a tutor. He was handsome, in a bookish way, with kind eyes and a charming, unassuming manner. Her parents, seated opposite him in the drawing room, were immediately captivated. Mr. Thorne, thank you so much for coming, Mrs. Vance said, her voice dripping with practiced warmth. Lily's grades, well, they've been a bit of a challenge lately. Elias Thorne chuckled softly. It's quite all right, Mrs. Vance. A lot of bright students simply need the right guidance, a new perspective. I'm confident we can get Lily back on track. He spoke with such assurance and grace that Lily's initial skepticism began to fade. Maybe he was the savior her parents claimed he was. Maybe he could help her. She watched as he effortlessly won over her father with a discussion of classical architecture, and her mother with a compliment on the house's interior design. He was the kind of man her parents adored, polished, intelligent, and subtly deferential. Their first tutoring session began in the home's sprawling study, a room filled with leather-bound books and heavy oak furniture. Elias was methodical and patient, breaking down complex historical concepts into manageable pieces. He asked her questions, not just about the material, but about her own interests, her learning style. He made her feel seen, not just as a problem to be solved, but as a person. The 2 hours flew by. Lily felt a genuine spark of intellectual curiosity she hadn't felt in months. See? He said, his smile genuine as he looked over her corrected practice test. You're not struggling with the concepts at all. You just needed to be shown a different way to think about them. Lily smiled back. A rare, unguarded smile. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne. That actually makes a lot more sense." As he gathered his things, she felt a sense of relief. This wasn't a punishment, it was a path forward. He picked up his pen from the desk and held it out to her, a small, polite gesture. As she reached for it, his fingers brushed against hers. The contact lasted for just a second too long, a soft, warm pressure that sent a small jolt of alarm through her. It was so fleeting, so quick, that she almost convinced herself she imagined it. He met her eyes and his smile didn't waver. "Until Wednesday, Lily," he said, his voice as calm and steady as before. Lily nodded, a sudden knot forming in her stomach. She watched him walk away, his back straight, his step light. He was the shadow in the corner of every room, the smile that didn't reach his eyes, and the too long touch of his hand on her shoulder as he pointed out a grammatical error. To her parents, he was a savior. To Lily, he was the beginning of a cold dread. The gilded cage of her privileged life was beginning to feel like a trap, and the man her parents trusted was the one holding the key. She stood there, the weight of the moment pressing down on her, and knew with a sickening certainty that this was no accident at all. The unsettling feeling from the first session didn't fade. It lingered, a faint but persistent chill that settled deep in Lily's stomach. It was a feeling she was unaccustomed to, a low-level hum of dread that colored everything. The polished marble floors of her home felt less like a sign of affluence and more like a slick, unforgiving surface. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer wasn't a comforting measure of time, but a countdown to her next tutoring session with Elias. The sessions became a twice-weekly ritual. Her mother would set out a tray of freshly baked cookies and a carafe of chilled lemon water in the study, a testament to the family's meticulous hospitality. Elias, ever the gentleman, would refuse, his smile never faltering. "No, thank you, Eleanor. We have much to get through." Her mother would leave, her face beaming with approval, and close the heavy oak doors behind her, sealing Lily inside with a man who was becoming less of a mentor and more of a threat. The psychological game began subtly. He would praise her work, his voice a low, encouraging murmur, but with each compliment, his physical boundaries would shrink. He started by standing too close to the desk, his presence looming over her as she worked on a problem. Then, it was his hand on her shoulder, a gentle, guiding pressure that lingered for a moment too long. "You're a brilliant girl, Lily," he'd say, his voice a whisper, his touch a possessive weight. "It's a shame no one has seen that in you until now." The words were meant to be empowering, but they felt manipulative, as if he were trying to establish a private, secret bond between them. Lily's skin would prickle under his touch. She would instinctively flinch, a small, involuntary movement she tried to hide. But he always seemed to notice. He would either pretend not to, continuing his lecture as if nothing had happened, or he would offer a soft, concerned smile. "Are you all right, Lily? You seem a little tense." His feigned concern felt like a cruel joke, a way of gaslighting her into believing her own discomfort was her fault. The physical contact escalated. As they went through a history textbook, he would lean over her, his arm brushing against her breast as he pointed to a date on the page. His breath, warm and close, would stir the hair at her neck. When she would try to shift away, her chair would scrape against the polished floor, a sharp, loud sound that would draw his attention. "Concentrate, Lily," he'd chide, his voice just low enough that she was sure her parents couldn't hear. "You're getting distracted." He found ways to make it seem accidental. He would drop a pen and, as he reached to pick it up, his hand would accidentally brush against her leg under the table. She would pull back, her heart pounding, her cheeks hot with shame and fear. He would straighten up, a look of calm innocence on his face, as if he had no idea what had just happened. This constant, creeping violation made it impossible for Lily to focus. Her mind, once a blank slate in her studies, was now a frantic maze of fear and panic, consumed with predicting his next move. She began to dread the days he was scheduled to come over. On Mondays and Wednesdays, a cold dread would settle in her stomach from the moment she woke up. She would try to feign sickness, clutching her head and complaining of a headache. But her mother, ever the perfectionist, would see through her lies. "Nonsense, darling. Mr. Thorne is coming. Your grades are finally improving. You can't miss a session." And her grades were improving. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. She was so terrified of his reactions, so desperate to end the sessions as quickly as possible, that she would stay up late studying, memorizing facts and figures just to prove to him and her parents that she was a good student. Her hard work paid off, and her report card was once again filled with A's. Her parents were ecstatic. "Look at this, Julian," her mother had exclaimed, holding the report card up as if it were a rare artifact. "We knew he was the right choice. He's a miracle worker." The praise felt like a punch to the gut. They saw his influence as a blessing, a key to her success, while she saw it as a prison. When she tried to hint at her discomfort, she was met with blank stares and dismissal. One evening, after a particularly violating session, she found her mother in the kitchen, meticulously arranging flowers. "Mom," she started, her voice a shaky whisper, "I don't really like Mr. Thorne." Eleanor Vance looked up from her vase, a look of surprise on her perfectly made-up face. "Don't be silly, darling. He's a wonderful man. All of your friends' parents are asking me for his number. We are so lucky to have him. But he makes me feel uncomfortable," Lily stammered, trying to find the right words. Her mother laughed, a short, light sound that dismissed her concerns entirely. "Oh, honey, you're just not used to a male teacher, that's all. You're overthinking it. Besides, your grades are the best they've been in years. You can't let your feelings get in the way of your future." She patted Lily's cheek, her hand cool and dismissive. "Now go on. Your father wants to take you shopping for a new dress to celebrate your report card." Lily walked away, the unspoken words a heavy weight in her throat. She had tried, and she had failed. Her parents had dismissed her fears as silly, as an overreaction, as a minor inconvenience in the face of her academic success. They were blinded by his charm and the positive results he brought. She was trapped in a golden cage, and the key was in the hands of a predator. She was utterly alone, and the silent scream inside her went unheard. The weeks bled into a horrifying routine. Each tutoring session was a descent into a new layer of control and manipulation. Elias's initial, unsettling touches had given way to a more overt, menacing form of behavior, hidden behind the closed doors of the study. The charming tutor her parents adored was a mask, and behind it was a person who reveled in a quiet, calculated form of cruelty. He no longer relied on accidental brushes. Instead, he created situations that made Lily feel helpless and trapped. He would ask her to work on a problem at the whiteboard, and as she stood with her back to him, he would move in close, his presence a wall of intimidation. When she would turn around, startled, he would smile his cool, disarming smile and pretend he was just checking her work, his fingers inches from her arm. He used the physical space of the room to his advantage, blocking her from the door, a silent, powerful assertion of his dominance. The worst part was his psychological game. He would praise her work one moment, telling her she was brilliant, and the next, he would subtly mock her, making her feel small and insignificant. "You're smart, Lily," he'd say, leaning over her shoulder. "But you have to understand that in the real world, you're still just a little girl." He had a way of twisting his words, making them sound like advice, while carrying a venomous undercurrent. He used her parents' expectations as a weapon. "Your mother and father would be so disappointed if they knew how much you struggle with these simple concepts. They have such high hopes for you." He began to create a narrative of secrecy between them, a sick, twisted form of shared intimacy. "This is our little secret, isn't it, Lily?" he'd whisper, his voice low and conspiratorial. "The things we discuss, the ways I have to push you to get the best out of you, it's for your own good. We wouldn't want to worry your parents, would we? They have enough on their minds." This was a new level of manipulation. He wasn't just invading her space, he was invading her mind, planting seeds of shame and complicity. He made her feel as if she were a part of his game, and if she spoke up, she would be betraying a trust she never agreed to. Lily's life outside of the tutoring sessions became a frantic attempt to avoid him, She would schedule extra ballet lessons, stay late at school for clubs, and even claim she had too much homework to have a session that day. But her parents were unwavering. The tutoring had become a cornerstone of their daughter's success, and they refused to allow her to disrupt it. Every excuse was met with anger and suspicion. "Why are you being so difficult, Lily?" her father demanded one evening, his face a mask of disappointment. "Mr. Thorne has bent over backward to help you, and now you want to skip sessions? This is irresponsible and ungrateful." Her mother, playing the role of the reasonable parent, would try to coax her. "Darling, he's so good for you. Look at your GPA. We've told all our friends about him. You can't just stop now." The more she tried to escape, the tighter the web grew. She was trapped, her every move scrutinized, and her attempts to break free only tightened the chains. She was now a prisoner in her own home, and her cellmate was a man who used her parents' love and trust as his ultimate weapon. The abuse was no longer subtle. It was a clear, horrifying reality. One afternoon, while reviewing a history project, Elias closed the door to the study, a small click that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Lily's breath hitched in her throat. He walked towards her, and his demeanor shifted completely. The friendly, intellectual mask fell away, revealing a cold, predatory gaze. He stood over her, his hands on the arms of her chair, trapping her. "What's wrong, Lily?" he asked, his voice low and mocking. "You look scared. You have nothing to be afraid of. I'm just here to help you." He leaned in, his face inches from hers. She could feel his hot breath on her cheek, smell the stale coffee on his breath. She tried to pull away, to turn her face, but she was pinned. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. She wanted to scream, to cry, but no sound came out. The terror was a physical force, stealing her voice, paralyzing her body. He was no longer playing games. This was a clear, unambiguous act of intimidation, and he was reveling in her fear. "You're so pretty when you're scared," he whispered, a chilling smile on his face. The session was a blur of humiliation and terror. He didn't touch her, not in a way that would leave a mark, but he held her there, a prisoner in her own home, a student trapped by her teacher. He mocked her, made her feel small, and when he finally let her go, he gave her a final warning. "If you ever mention this to anyone, they won't believe you. They'll think you're making it up. You know your parents would be crushed to think their daughter would lie about something so serious. So, we'll keep this our little secret. Understood?" Lily could only nod, her body trembling, tears streaming down her face. She was utterly broken. The gilded cage had become a torture chamber, and she saw no way out. The man her parents trusted was a monster, and he had convinced her that no one would ever believe her. She was alone, trapped, and the silent scream inside her was now a constant deafening roar. Lily's life became a fragile performance. She was an actress on a stage, playing the role of a happy, normal teenager, while a silent scream echoed in her mind. The humiliation and fear from the last tutoring session had broken something inside her. She was no longer just afraid of what Elias would do. She was now convinced that no one would believe her. His words had burrowed deep into her psyche. "They won't believe you. You know your parents would be crushed." The golden cage had become a psychological prison, and the bars were made of her own shame and fear. Her emotional state deteriorated rapidly. She was a ghost in her own home, moving through the halls with a silent detachment. She stopped eating with her family, claiming she had to study in her room. When her parents insisted she join them, she would sit at the dinner table, a vacant look in her eyes, barely touching her food. Her father, consumed with his business, saw her quietness as a sign of dedication to her studies. Her mother, more observant, would ask, "Are you feeling well, darling? You look so tired." Lily would just nod and offer a weak, practiced smile. She was a master of the polite, dismissive lie. Her friends noticed the change. The once vivacious, charming Lily was now withdrawn and distant. She stopped responding to their texts. She declined invitations to weekend parties, and she would walk with her head down at school, avoiding eye contact. Her best friend, Maya, was the first to sense something was deeply wrong. Maya was the opposite of Lily's world. She was a vibrant, no-nonsense girl from a middle-class family who saw right through the polished facade of Lily's life. "Lily, what's going on?" Maya asked one day, cornering her in the library. "You haven't been yourself lately. You're never at lunch. You don't answer my calls. Did something happen with your parents?" Lily's heart pounded. She longed to tell Maya everything, to unburden the crushing weight on her chest. But Elias's voice was a constant, mocking whisper in her ear. "They won't believe you. You'll just look crazy." She shook her head, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Nothing, Maya. I'm just really stressed about school. My parents are on my case about my grades." "That's a lie," Maya said, her voice firm but gentle. "Your grades are perfect. Your mom told my mom you're an academic superstar now, thanks to your new tutor. Is that it? Is he too hard on you?" The word tutor felt like a hot iron on Lily's skin. She flinched, a reaction so subtle and quick that Maya almost missed it. But she didn't. She saw the haunted look in Lily's eyes, the way her shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. "He's fine," Lily said, the word a bitter taste in her mouth. "He's just very demanding." Maya didn't press her further, but her gaze was filled with a deep, knowing concern. She knew Lily was lying, and it was a truth they both carried in silence. The irony of her situation was a daily torment. Her parents were convinced Elias Thorne was their family's savior. They praised him endlessly at dinner parties, telling their friends how he had unlocked Lily's potential. Her father had even given him a generous bonus, a fact he had announced with a proud flourish. "Mr. Thorne has done wonders for our little girl," he had said, clapping Elias on the shoulder in front of a crowd of wealthy acquaintances. Elias had simply smiled, a look of quiet triumph in his eyes. To everyone else, he was a genius and a gentleman. To Lily, he was a monster hiding in plain sight. The shame was a heavy, suffocating blanket. She had always been taught that she was special, that she was strong, that she came from a family of winners, but she felt weak, powerless, and utterly defeated. She would stand in front of her mirror, her reflection, a pale, hollowed-out version of herself, and wonder how this had happened. Why couldn't she just scream? Why couldn't she tell someone? The fear of being disbelieved, of being humiliated, of having her perfect life crumble around her, was a greater torment than the situation itself. She had been conditioned to believe that her family's reputation was more important than anything, and now she was living the consequences of that belief. She found herself flinching whenever her father put a hand on her shoulder, or when a male teacher at school called her name. The casual touches of the world had become triggers, sending a wave of panic through her. She was a raw nerve, constantly on edge. The silent scream was a part of her now. It was the frantic pounding of her heart every time Elias's car pulled into the driveway. It was the tears that silently streamed down her face when she was alone in her room at night. It was the quiet, desperate prayer that someone, anyone, would see through the perfect facade and save her. But no one did. Or at least, she didn't think they did. The silence was a wall she had built around herself, and she was too terrified to tear it down. The only person who saw the cracks was Maya, and Lily was about to find out just how much that one person's belief could change everything. The tension between Lily and Maya came to a head on a crisp autumn afternoon. Maya had been watching Lily's silent suffering for weeks. The polite smiles, the averted eyes, the way she seemed to shrink whenever an adult male entered a room. The facade of the perfect, privileged girl was cracking, and Maya was determined to get to the truth before it shattered completely. They were walking home from school, the air cool and the leaves a vibrant red and orange. Lily was quiet, staring at her feet as they walked. Maya, fed up with the silence, stopped in her tracks. "Lily, I'm not doing this anymore," she said, her voice firm. Lily looked up, startled. "Doing what?" "This," Maya gestured vaguely at Lily's hunched shoulders and vacant eyes. "Whatever this is, you're my best friend, and you're acting like a ghost. I can't just stand by and watch you disappear." The bluntness of her words hit Lily like a physical blow. Her carefully constructed wall of silence trembled. "I told you, I'm just stressed." "Stressed?" Maya scoffed gently. "Stressed people don't flinch when someone touches their arm. Stressed people don't look like they're about to cry every time someone asks about their new tutor." The word tutor was a key that finally unlocked the floodgates. Lily's eyes filled with tears, and her carefully controlled composure crumbled. She sat down on a nearby park bench, buried her face in her hands, and began to sob. The sound a ragged, broken gasp. Maya sat beside her, her hand a warm, comforting presence on Lily's back. She didn't say anything. She just waited, her silent support a beacon in the storm of Lily's emotions. When Lily's sobs finally subsided, leaving her with a shaky, exhausted breath, Maya spoke. "Okay, now tell me everything." And Lily did. The words came tumbling out, a torrent of fear, shame, and humiliation that had been building for months. She told Maya about Elias's subtle, then overt, invasions of her personal space. She recounted the manipulative words, the menacing glares, the constant psychological warfare. She confessed her fear that her parents wouldn't believe her, that they would see her as ungrateful, as a liar. She spoke about the quiet, terrifying feeling of being a prisoner in her own home, and the crushing weight of her family's reputation. As Lily spoke, Maya's expression shifted from concern to anger, her eyes flashing with a righteous fury that Lily had never seen before. When Lily was finished, she looked up, her face streaked with tears, and waited for the inevitable dismissal. She was prepared for Maya to tell her she was overreacting, that she was being silly. But Maya said nothing of the sort. Instead, Maya took Lily's hands in hers, her grip firm and reassuring. "Lily," she said, her voice low and steady, "I believe you, every single word. What he's doing is wrong. It's not your fault, and you have nothing to be ashamed of." Those words, so simple and so profound, were a lifeline in the middle of a dark sea. The shame that had been a part of her for so long began to recede, replaced by a glimmer of hope. Someone believed her. Someone saw the truth behind her facade. "But my parents," Lily whispered, her fear returning. "They love him. They think he's a genius. They won't believe me." "They have to," Maya said, her determination unwavering. "They're your parents, and if they don't, we'll make them. We'll go to the school. We'll go to the police. This isn't just about your grades anymore, Lily. This is about you. We're not letting him get away with this." Maya's unwavering belief gave Lily a strength she didn't know she had. It was a small spark, but it was enough to light a fire. The thought of confronting her parents, of shattering their perfect world, was terrifying. But the alternative, living with the silent scream for the rest of her life, was a far greater horror. The chapter ended with a plan. Maya would go with her. They would tell her parents together. It was a terrifying, necessary step. As they walked away from the park bench, Lily no longer felt like a ghost. She was a girl with a friend, and she was finally ready to fight. Lily's heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. She was sitting in the opulent drawing room of her home, the very room where her parents had first been charmed by Alias Thorne. Maya was beside her, her presence a solid, grounding force. Julian and Eleanor Vance sat opposite them, their faces a mixture of confusion and mild annoyance. They had been called away from a charity gala, and their impatience was palpable. "Lily, what is so important that it couldn't wait until morning?" her father asked, his tone clipped. "We're supposed to be at the museum wing's unveiling." Lily took a deep breath, her hands clutched tightly in her lap. This was the moment, the point of no return. Maya squeezed her hand, a silent signal of support. "It's about Mr. Thorne," Lily began, her voice a shaky whisper. Her parents' expressions immediately softened. "Oh, darling, is something wrong with your sessions? He said you were making wonderful progress." Her mother's voice was warm, filled with a trust that felt like a betrayal. Lily looked at her mother, then at her father, and felt a surge of cold anger. The monster had been right there, in front of them, for months, and they had been too blind to see it. This realization gave her the courage she needed. "He's not a good man," she said, her voice gaining strength. "He's not what you think he is." Julian Vance's face hardened. "What are you talking about? He's a professional. He's done more for your grades than anyone ever has. He uses his position to intimidate me, Lily said. The words a raw confession. He closes the door. He blocks me in the room. He tells me this is our little secret and that you would never believe me if I told you. Her father stood up, his face flushed with disbelief. That's absurd. He's the most respected tutor in the city. You're making this up, Lily. Are you just trying to get out of your lessons? The accusation was a fresh wound. But this time, it didn't paralyze her. This time, she wasn't alone. She is not lying, Maya said, her voice cutting through the tension. I've seen how he acts around her. I've seen how scared she is. He's been doing this for months, and you've been so focused on her grades that you haven't seen what's right in front of you. Eleanor Vance's carefully composed expression wavered. She looked at Lily, at the raw terror and pain in her eyes, then back at Maya, at the unwavering conviction on her face. A flicker of doubt, a crack in her perfect world began to appear. Lily, is this true? Her mother asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, Lily said, the word a desperate plea for them to listen. He told me no one would believe me. The silence in the room was deafening. Her father, a man who built an empire on logic and control, was struggling to process a truth that defied everything he believed. Her mother, whose life was a series of carefully curated events and appearances, looked as if her entire world had been turned upside down. It was her mother who broke first. She sank onto the couch, her hand trembling as she covered her mouth. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh, my sweet girl. The look on her face wasn't anger or disbelief. It was a profound, gut-wrenching horror. Julian Vance's resistance crumbled in that moment. He saw the genuine, heart-stopping fear in his daughter's eyes. A fear that no